The Dralethian survey ship Molten Claw hung in the void above Terra, its angular hull bathed in the dim red glow of dying thrusters. Commander Dralethian watched through the reinforced viewport as the planet's blue-green surface scrolled beneath them, his segmented fingers tightening around the railing. The world was quiet, too quiet. For centuries, the Dralethian Imperium had dismissed humanity as a fractured, primitive species, too busy waging war against itself to pose any real threat. Their military doctrines were crude, their technology laughable. Ballistics, chemical explosives, even their so-called nuclear weapons were little more than blunt instruments compared to the precision of plasma lances and singularity projectors. Dralethian's secondary eyelids flicked sideways as he studied the tactical display. The human homeworld should have been a ruin. The Great Galactic War had raged for decades, entire systems reduced to molten slag, yet Terra remained untouched. No orbital bombardment scars, no craters from kinetic strikes, just silence. Commander. Vashdor's voice was a low, grinding hum. The scientist's copper, plated cranial ridges reflecting the dim glow of the bridge. Initial scans confirm minimal energy signatures, no active military installations, no fleet presence. Dralethian exhaled through his ventral vents, the sound like steam escaping a pressure valve. That's impossible. The humans were at war with the Zenthar Dominion for 12 cycles. Their homeworld should be a graveyard. Vashdor's talons tapped against his data slate, the rhythmic clicking betraying unease. Perhaps they surrendered. Dralethian's mandibles twitched in disgust. Surrender was not in the human lexicon. Every intelligence report, every intercepted transmission, spoke of a species that fought to the last breath, even when outmatched, even when outgunned. Run the scans again, he ordered. Deeper penetration, I want to see what they're hiding. The Molten Claw's primary array pulsed, orange, red energy lancing down through the atmosphere, peeling back layers of electromagnetic interference. The bridge crew waited in tense silence as the data streamed in, and then the screens flared crimson. Vashdor recoiled, his dorsal spines flaring. Commander, Dralethian didn't need the warning. The display was clear. Beneath the surface of Terra, buried in bunkers of reinforced alloy and shielded by energy dampeners, the Dralethians hadn't even known existed, were thousands, no millions of life signs. Human life signs, and they were waking up. Major Victoria Harriman opened her eyes. The cryopod hissed as its seals disengaged. Frost-caked glass sliding away to reveal the dim red emergency lighting of the underground complex. Her breath fogged in the cold air, her muscles stiff from decades of forced stasis around her. Row upon row of pods were powering up, their occupants stirring. Scientists, the last defenders of Terra. She flexed her fingers, feeling the neural interface nodes embedded in her palms hum to life. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. On the bridge of the Molten Claw, Dralethian stared at the tactical readout in disbelief. The humans hadn't surrendered. They'd gone to sleep, and now they were awake. The Molten Claw's command deck thrummed with the deep rhythmic pulse of its forge, core casting the chamber in an oppressive orange glow. The air smelled of scorched metal and ionized plasma, thick with the acrid tang of Dralethian industry. Commander Dralethian's segmented armor plates flexed as he leaned over the holographic display, his molten copper eyes reflecting the flickering data streams. The scans didn't lie. Beneath the ruins of Terra's surface, beneath the shattered cities and glassed wastelands, the Dralethians had bombarded into submission, lay a labyrinth of bunkers, not mere shelters, but vast. Fortified warrens, shielded by dampeners that had masked them from orbital detection. And now, those dampeners were powering down. Life signs flared across the display like embers in a furnace. Thousands, then tens of thousands, then millions. Vashdor, the ship's chief scientist, adjusted the scanner's resolution with a clawed hand, his voice a low, grinding rasp. This is not possible. Our bombardment protocols were thorough. No organic life should have survived. Dralethian's mandibles twitched. Yet they did. The humans hadn't just hidden. They had burrowed, and now they were rising. Major Victoria Harriman's first breath tasted of sterile air and the faint metallic tang of cryo. Fluid, her limbs ached, the neural interface nodes in her palms prickling as they synced with her nervous system. Around her, the bunker's emergency lighting bathed the chamber in a dim crimson, illuminating row upon row of awakening soldiers. She remembered the last moments before stasis, the sky burning, the orbital strikes turning cities to ash. The order had been simple: survive, wait, return, and now the wait was over. Her HUD flickered to life in her retinal display, feeding her status updates. Systems online, armory intact, personnel, Faye viable. A voice crackled through the bunker's comms. Major Harriman, this is Corporal Lee. Reactivation sequence complete. Awaiting orders. She exhaled, watching her breath mist in the cold air. Prepare the legions, she said. The Dralethians think they've won. Let's remind them what happens when you wake a sleeping wolf. On the surface, the first bunker doors groaned open. Dralethian's tactical display lit up with movement, heat signatures, machinery, weapons. The humans weren't scrambling in panic. They weren't surrendering. They were marching. Vashdor's voice was tight. Commander, their energy signatures. They're not just infantry. They're deploying armored divisions from underground. Dralethian's claws dug into the console. This wasn't a resistance. This was a counter-offensive section. Faye, the first signal. The ground trembled beneath the Dralethian forward command post. Not from orbital bombardment, but from something far more unsettling. The seismic sensors embedded in the blackened soil of Terra's northern continent registered deep, rhythmic impacts. Not random collapses, not aftershocks. Dralethian's command hub, a segmented fortress of dark alloy and pulsing orange plasma conduits, hummed with emergency protocols. His tactical officers scrambled over holographic displays, their spined crests flicking in agitation as new data scrolled across the screens. The humans weren't just emerging. They were advancing in perfect formation, as if the centuries buried beneath the earth had been nothing but a momentary pause in some long-rehearsed maneuver. Vashdor's claws hovered over the scanner console, the molten, orange glow of the interface reflecting in his wide black, irised eyes. Commander, he hissed, mandibles twitching. Their armor signatures, they don't match any known Terran models from the archives. Dralethian didn't need the scientist to elaborate. The holographic feed showed the first human war machines breaching the surface. Monolithic, angular constructs of layered armor plating, their hulls scarred with ancient battle damage, but still operational. Not the sleek, fragile tanks of pre-contact records. These were behemoths, their treads crushing the rubble of their own ruined cities as they rolled forward without hesitation. And then there were the soldiers. Corporal Evan Lee's unit emerged first. Their powered armor a patchwork of old-world steel and newer, unfamiliar alloys. Their helmets were sealed, visors dark. But the way they moved, fluid, synchronized, sent a primal warning through Dralethian's instincts. These weren't desperate survivors. These were veterans. A flicker on the edge of the scanner display caught Vashdor's attention. Energy spike, he barked. The first human railgun fired. The projectile crossed the distance between the emerging Terran lines and the Dralethian forward position in less than a second. It didn't just hit the command hub's energy shield. It shattered it, the kinetic force rippling through the shield matrix like a hammer through glass. The impact sent Dralethian staggering, his exoskeleton bracing automatically as debris rained from the ceiling. Alarms wailed, their harsh, industrial shrieks drowning out the shouts of his officers. "Return fire," Dralethian roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. The Dralethian artillery batteries, massive forge, cannons fed by superheated plasma, swiveled toward the human lines. They unleashed a barrage of molten fury, the projectiles screaming through the air like falling stars. The humans didn't scatter. Major Harriman's voice crackled through the Terran comms, calm and razor-edged. Shields up. A shimmering lattice of blue energy flared to life along the advancing human ranks. Not the crude barrier tech the Dralethians had seen in old war footage, but something new, something dense. The plasma rounds detonated against it in bursts of orange fire, but the shield held, not just held absorbed, the energy dissipating harmlessly across its surface. Vashdor's claws clenched. That is our technology, the shield harmonics. They've reverse-engineered it. Dralethian's blood ran cold. The humans hadn't just survived underground, they'd adapted. And now, they were fighting back with weapons reforged in the dark. On the battlefield below, Corporal Lee's unit advanced, their railguns humming with charged energy. Behind them, more bunker doors groaned open. The first signal had been sent. The Dralethians just hadn't realized it was a declaration of war. The battlefield trembled under the weight of the human counteroffensive. Dralethian's command hub, a brutalist spire of segmented dark metal and molten conduits, pulsed with emergency alerts. The orange-red glow of tactical displays painted his armored face in flickering embers. But for the first time in his long military career, the High Commander felt something alien clawing at his resolve. Out below, the human shield wall advanced like a living glacier, inexorable, unyielding. Their blue energy barriers drank the Dralethian plasma fire, dispersing it in rippling waves. It wasn't just reverse-engineered tech, it was improved, smoother, more efficient. As if the humans had taken the principles of Dralethian shielding and refined them in some hidden forge of war, hammering out the imperfections through generations of trial and error. Vashdor's data console screamed with anomalies. His copper-clawed fingers danced over the holographic readouts, his frilled crest flaring in agitation. Their shield modulation, it's adaptive. It learns every volley we fire. Their systems adjust to dissipate it faster. This isn't just replication, Dralethian. This is evolution. Dralethian's mandibles tightened. Evolution implied time, patience. The Dralethians had watched Terra for centuries, cataloging human wars as brutish, chaotic skirmishes, species-wide tantrums of a child race. But this spoke of something else. A calculated generational defiance. On the ground, Major Harriman's voice cut through the chaos, calm as a surgeon's blade. Lee, flank left. Bunker 7 is hot. Corporal Evan Lee moved without hesitation. His railgun, a sleek monstrosity of blackened steel and humming capacitors, cycled with a sound like a starving beast. The Dralethian forward emplacement never saw the shot coming. A hypersonic round that punched through their molten core barricade like paper, detonating the plasma reserves inside. The explosion lit the battlefield in hellish orange, silhouetting the advancing human infantry. Dralethian warriors faltered. Their doctrine had no answer for this. They were a species forged in the fires of industrial warfare, masters of overwhelming force, of grinding enemies beneath the weight of superior industry. But the humans, they fought like vengeance incarnate. And then the second wave emerged. From the yawning black mouths of Terra's bunkers came the walkers, hulking bipedal war machines, their armor scorched from centuries of dormancy, but still functional, still hungry. Their gait was uneven, their systems archaic by galactic standards, but their weapons, their weapons were horrors. Particle beams ripped through Dralethian lines, carving molten furrows in the earth. Vashdor's voice was hollow. Those are pre-collapse models. Ancient, they shouldn't even function. Dralethian watched as a human walker, its hull pitted with age, took a direct hit from a Dralethian plasma cannon. The shot should have vaporized it. Instead, the machine shook off the blast, its reactor flaring blue, white as it returned fire. Survival wasn't enough for these creatures, they had remembered. And now, they were awake. The High Commander's claws dug into the command console somewhere, in the dark beneath Terra's corpse. Cities, the humans had not just endured, they had studied. They had taken the shattered remnants of their old world and reforged them into something sharper. Something worse. The first Dralethian retreat began as a ripple, then a flood. Dralethian understood, then, the true depth of his error. This was not a rebellion. It was a reckoning. The command bunker smelled of scorched metal and ionized air. Dralethian's claws flexed against the war table's surface, leaving deep grooves in the alloy. The holographic display flickered between tactical readouts, red sigils of Dralethian battalions, collapsing, blue markers of human forces advancing with methodical, terrifying precision. Vashdor stood motionless beside him, his ocular implants cycling through magnification scales as he studied the feed from the front. The humans weren't just winning, they were adapting. Their walkers, once sluggish relics, now moved with eerie synchronicity, their targeting systems bypassing Dralethian jamming protocols as if they had been designed to do so. Because they had, the realization settled like molten lead in Dralethian's gut. The humans hadn't merely preserved their old weapons. They had engineered his own. The plasma signatures flickering along their railgun barrels matched Dralethian forge, core harmonics. Their armor plating bore the telltale fractal dispersal patterns of their own shielding tech. A chime sounded, an incoming transmission, not the usual burst of encrypted battle chatter, but a clean, open channel, the kind used for parley. Vashdor's cranial spines twitched. They're hailing us. Dralethian hesitated. To answer was to acknowledge them as equals. To refuse was to invite annihilation. His mandibles clenched. Put it through. The holodisplay shimmered, resolving into the image of a human officer. She stood framed by the dim glow of a subterranean command center, her uniform worn but immaculate, her gaze steady. Behind her, shadows moved, figures in patched armor, their faces obscured by rebreathers. "High Commander Dralethian," she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "Major Victoria Harriman, Terra Reclamation Corps." Dralethian's secondary heart pulsed faster. He had expected rage, the frothing fury of a species pushed to extinction. Not this, not control. "You fight well," he admitted. The words ash in his throat. "For scavengers." Harriman's mouth quirked. Not a smile, but something colder. "Scavengers don't rebuild fusion cores from scrap. Scavengers don't learn." She tilted her head slightly. "You came here thinking we were rats hiding in the ruins. But rats don't study." A flicker of movement behind her. A younger human, barely more than a cadet, adjusting a console. Corporal Evan Lee, if the insignia was correct. His hands moved with the unconscious precision of someone who had trained on equipment far older than himself. Vashdor's voice was a whisper. Their neural interfaces. "Commander, look at the feed." Dralethian did. The human's console wasn't just operational, it was enhanced. Wires snaked from its ports into Lee's forearm, a crude but effective symbiosis of flesh and machine. Harriman followed his gaze. "You took our world, but you never took our minds." She leaned forward. "We're offering you a chance to leave. One ship, no pursuit." The air in the bunker grew heavier. Dralethian's warriors shifted, their armor creaking. A retreat now would mean disgrace. Exile, but to stay. The holodisplay flickered again, zooming in on the battlefield. Human infantry moved in perfect unison. Their movement synchronized not by comms, but by something deeper. A pack bonding so intrinsic it defied Dralethian tactical algorithms. Vashdor exhaled sharply. Their coordination, it's not machine, augmented. Its biological. Harriman's eyes never left Dralethian's. "We don't need your tech to beat you. We just needed time." The silence stretched. Outside, the distant thunder of artillery shook the ground. Dralethian made his choice. Section Fey. The trap. The command bunker's lights flickered as another artillery barrage struck somewhere above ground. Dust sifted from the ceiling, catching in the orange glow of Dralethian's retinal implants. His warriors stood frozen, their segmented armor plates locked in tension. the molten cores of their plasma rifles pulsing like caged stars. Retreat. The word tasted like slag in his mandibles. Dralethian doctrine had no concept of surrender, only victory or annihilation. Yet here, in this buried human warren, the High Commander found himself calculating losses like some merchant caste weakling. His claws flexed against the holodisplay's edge, leaving molten scratches in the metal. The projection showed the battlefield in real time, human squads flowing through ruins like liquid shadow, their movements too precise, too aligned. No comm chatter, no delay, just instinctive, terrifying synchronicity. Vashdor's data slate chimed, the sound dissonant against the bunker's thick silence. The scientist's frills flared as he parsed the new readings, their neural patterns. It's not just coordination. They're predicting each other. His voice carried the hollow reverence of a scholar witnessing heresy. Some form of subliminal cueing, auditory, pheromonal. Harriman didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply watched Dralethian. Her stance relaxed in a way that made his combat subroutines itch with threat. Assessment alerts. Humans shouldn't be able to stand like that, loose, unarmored, without triggering a warrior's kill reflex. Yet every instinct screamed that attacking her would be fatal. Outside, the thunder grew louder. Closer, Corporal Lee's makeshift neural link spat sparks as he adjusted the wiring. The human's pupils were dilated, his breathing steady despite the crude cybernetics burrowing into his flesh. No pain suppressants, no biostabilizers, just teeth clenched against the agony, and focus so sharp it could cut durasteel. Dralethian's warriors exchanged glances. Their own neural enhancers required sterile surgical theaters and months of synaptic conditioning. This human had jury, rigged a battlefield interface in minutes. And it worked. The holodisplay flared crimson, a Dralethian dropship. His dropship blinked out of existence mid-descent. No explosion, no debris, just gone, as if space itself had swallowed it whole. Harriman finally moved, a single step forward, her boots silent on the grated floor. That's your extraction route gone. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. Last chance. Commander, order the retreat. Dralethian's mandibles clicked in cold amusement. She thought this was a negotiation. His combat harness hummed as he activated the fleet-wide channel. All units, pattern Krathis, the ancient Dralethian term for scorched earth. Vashdor recoiled. You can't mean to. The bunker's walls trembled as orbital batteries answered. Somewhere above, the sky turned white with cleansing fire. Harriman sighed. Lee, the corporal's grin was a bloodied, feral thing. He slammed his palm onto the holodisplay. The battlefield changed. Ruins shifted. Streets reconfigured. Entire blocks of rubble rose on hydraulic platforms, revealing kill. Zones the Dralethian tactical scans had sworn were empty. Human soldiers emerged not from cover, but from inside the terrain itself. Buried tunnels, sewer lines, even the hollow shells of burned out tanks. Dralethian's retinal feed flooded with targeting alerts. Everywhere. They were everywhere. Vashdor's data. Slate clattered to the floor. The city. It's not a battlefield. It's a mechanism. Harriman's eyes never left Dralethian's. Welcome to Terra, Commander. Outside, the first human railgun batteries fired. The sky screamed, and the trap snapped shut. The Dralethian command hub flickered under the weight of incoming fire. Orange, red emergency lights staining the walls the color of molten steel. Dralethian's claws flexed against the holodisplay, his neural interface scrambling to process the battlefield sudden, impossible shift. They were beneath us. The thought was a blade in his gut. His tactical overlay had been pristine, every human position mapped, every defensive line accounted for. Yet now, the city itself had unfolded, revealing hidden arteries of war streets. He had marked as secure now pulsed with human soldiers emerging from the earth, like vengeful specters. Vashdor's voice was a rasp of static over the comms. They're fortifications, they're not static, they're adaptive. Dralethian snarled, mandibles flaring. Adaptive was too clean a word. This was something else, something alive. The humans hadn't just dug tunnels. They had turned the entire urban sprawl into a living weapon, its veins pumping with ambush points and kill zones that reconfigured in real time. A proximity alert shrieked. His retinal feed lit with the thermal bloom of human railgun fire. Hypervelocity rounds shearing through the sky, punching through Dralethian armor like it was brittle alloy. The ground shook as another of his forward battalions vanished in a storm of white, hot shrapnel. Harriman hadn't moved. She stood at the center of the bunker, her silhouette framed by the carnage outside, her expression unreadable. "You knew," Dralethian transmitted, the words laced with a fury that burned hotter than his ship's plasma cores. This was never a city, it was a maw. Harriman's lips twitched, not a smile, something darker. "You scanned our defenses. You just didn't scan deep enough." A new alert pulsed, a seismic anomaly. Beneath the ruins, something vast and ancient stirred. Corporal Evan Lee crouched in the belly of the earth, his fingers wrapped around a detonator older than his grandfather. The chamber around him was a relic, cold concrete walls etched with faded warnings, the air thick with the scent of oil and rust. A single red light blinked above a sealed vault door, its surface pitted with age. "Sleeper 1 is live," Lee murmured into his calm. Static, then Harriman's voice, calm as a surgeon's scalpel. "Wake it up," Lee exhaled. The detonator's safety toggle came off with a click that echoed like a gunshot in the dark. They called them sleepers, buried relics of the last Great War, sealed beneath cities that had outlived their purpose. Most were just bunkers, stockpiles of forgotten weapons, emergency reactors, dead men's caches. But Sleeper 1 was different. Lee's thumb hovered over the trigger. The vault door groaned. Dralethian's sensors screamed. Beneath the battlefield, something awoke. A seismic ripple tore through the earth, sending Dralethian walkers stumbling like drunkards. The rubble shifted. Then, silence. The ground exploded. A segmented monstrosity erupted from the earth. A titan of blackened steel and hydraulic fury. It was a machine. No, a behemoth. Its hull pocked with centuries of corrosion, its limbs thick with dormant weapon ports. Orange, red emergency lights flickered to life along its spine, mirroring the Dralethian energy signatures with mocking precision. Vashtor's voice was a whisper of horror. "That's not human. That's ours." Dralethian's blood ran cold. The machine's design was unmistakable. Angular plating, segmented armor, the brutalist architecture of a Dralethian siege engine. But it was wrong, modified, perverted. Human glyphs had been welded over its original markings. Its systems jury, rigged with crude, vicious upgrades. Harriman's voice cut through the chaos. "War trophy from the first contact wars. We dug it up, took it apart, learned." The behemoth's primary cannon cycled online, its barrel glowing the same molten orange as Dralethian plasma cores. "Then we put it back together," Harriman said. Better. The cannon fired. The world turned white. The blast carved through the Dralethian formation like a god's wrath. Molten orange plasma. Their plasma refined and amplified, sheared through the lead cruiser's armor as if it were parchment. The vessel buckled, its segmented plates peeling back in glowing ribbons before the secondary explosion ripped it apart from within. Dralethian's tactical display flared crimson with damage reports, his command chair vibrating from the shockwave even at this distance. Impossible. The human war machine. No, the abomination, loomed before them, its Dralethian skeleton now a grotesque fusion of alien engineering and human butchery. Where once there had been orderly conduits of controlled plasma, there were now crude, overlapping reinforcement struts, their welds jagged and uneven. The primary cannon, still cycling down from its apocalyptic discharge, pulsed with an unstable, feverish glow. It was as if the humans had taken a masterpiece of Dralethian warfare and reforged it in the heart of a star, heedless of the damage. Vashdor's claws dug into the armrests of his station. They stripped it. Rebuilt the containment protocols. That shot should have destabilized the core. Draltel's mandibles clenched. Human recklessness. Human insanity. They had taken a weapon designed for precision annihilation and turned it into a barely controlled detonation waiting to happen. And yet, the machine moved. Its massive limbs, once meant for slow, deliberate siege positioning, now lurched forward with terrifying speed. Hydraulics hissed, pistons firing in rapid bursts as it closed the distance. The humans hadn't just repaired it. They had optimized it, made it fast. Harriman's voice crackled over the comms, calm amid the carnage. You left it behind. We don't waste anything. A second cruiser erupted as the behemoth's secondary batteries, railgun arrays, unmistakably human, punched through its shields. The projectiles left no trail, no warning. One moment, the Dralethian vessel was intact. The next, its midsection was a gaping maw of twisted metal, atmosphere venting in frozen plumes. Draltel's tactical officer turned to him, his ocular lenses flickering with disbelief. High Commander, their targeting systems, they're predicting our evasive patterns. Of course they were. The humans had studied them, not just their technology, but their tactics, their instincts. Every battle, every skirmish since first contact had been another lesson, another piece of data fed into the grinding machine of human adaptation. And now, they had turned the Dralethians' own weapons against them. Vashdor's voice was hollow. They didn't just salvage it, they understood it. The behemoth's third shot missed. Not because of error, because the humans had let it. The plasma bolt streaked past the Dralethian flagship, close enough to scorch the outer plating. A warning, a message. Harriman's face appeared on the view screen, her expression unreadable. You came to study us, she said. Now you have. The behemoth's weapon ports flared again, but this time they didn't fire. Instead, a new signal pulsed across the comms. An open channel, an invitation. Draltel exhaled, his carapace rigid with the weight of realization. This wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration, and humanity had just proven it could wield Dralethian fire better than the Dralethians themselves. The silence on the Dralethian flagship was thick, oppressive, like the air before a storm. The molten, orange glow of the bridge's energy cores pulsed erratically, casting jagged shadows across the angular command consoles. Draltel stood motionless, his segmented armor plates locked tight, his neural tendrils coiled in a way that betrayed neither fear nor fury, only the cold, creeping weight of understanding. They had come to dissect humanity, to measure its weaknesses, to categorize its failures. Instead, they had been given a lesson in defiance. The human warship, their warship now, reforged in fire and stolen knowledge, loomed on the view screen, its silhouette, a grotesque hybrid of Dralethian brutality and human ingenuity. The weapon ports still glowed, not with the searing heat of imminent destruction, but with the steady, patient hum of waiting. Vashdor's claws scraped against the console as he pulled up the tactical feed. His voice was a whisper, barely audible over the thrum of the ship's core. They've locked onto our engines, not our weapons, not our shields. Engines. Draltel didn't need the data to confirm it. He could see it in the way the human vessel held position, not poised to strike, but to chase, to ensure there was no retreat, a hunter stance. The comms crackled again. Harriman's voice was calm, almost conversational. You have a choice. No demands, no ultimatums, just those 4 words, hanging in the void between them. Vashdor's ocular lenses flickered, his neural tendrils twitching in agitation. They're toying with us. Draltel exhaled, the sound a slow hiss through his respiratory vents. No, they're testing us. The realization settled like molten metal in his veins. This wasn't about destruction. It wasn't even about victory. It was about recognition. The humans had taken their greatest weapon, mastered it in weeks, and now wielded it not as conquerors, but as equals. They had turned the Dralethians' own doctrine against them. Adaptation through annihilation, and now they waited. Would the Dralethians do the same on the lower decks? The crew murmured in hushed, fractured tones. Some called for retreat, others for one final, desperate assault. But the truth was written in the trembling of their claws, the flicker of their bioluminescent sigils dimming with uncertainty. They had come to study humans as specimens. Now they faced them as opponents. Corporal Evan Lee's voice cut through the silence, transmitted from the human vessel's secondary comm array. You wanted to know how we fight. Now you do. A pause. But you still don't know why. Dralethian's mandibles tightened. That was the true revelation. The humans hadn't rebuilt the behemoth out of spite. They hadn't turned its guns on the Dralethians out of vengeance. They had done it to prove a point. Survival wasn't enough. Adaptation wasn't enough. Humans fought, always for something more. The choice was simple. Flee and admit defeat, or stay and learn what came next. Dralethian turned to the view screen, his neural tendrils uncoiling in slow, deliberate motion. He opened the comm channel, and for the first time since the war began, he listened. The silence between the two ships stretched like a wire pulled to breaking. Dralethian's command spire hummed with the low, molten thrum of Dralethian reactors, their orange, red plasma cores, pulsing in time with his own racing circulatory rhythm. The air smelled of scorched metal and ionized particles, thick with the acrid tang of fear. His neural tendrils, usually coiled tight with certainty, now writhed in restless arcs, betraying the storm beneath his exoskeleton. On the view screen, the human warship loomed a jagged silhouette against the void, its armor pitted and scorched but unbroken. It should have been a relic, a museum piece, a testament to human fragility. Instead, it was a blade pressed against the throat of Dralethian pride. Vashdor's data streams flickered across the command console, a river of calculations and projections that all led to the same conclusion. They should not be able to do this. The humans had no right to stand against the Dralethian war machine. Their technology was cobbled together from salvaged wrecks and half-understood alien schematics. Their tactics were reckless, their strategies born of desperation rather than doctrine. And yet they had won, not through superior firepower, not through flawless execution, but through something far more terrifying: sheer refusal to break. Dralethian's claws flexed against the armrest of his command throne. He had studied human history, their wars, their rebellions, their stubborn, suicidal last stands. He had dismissed them as the flailing of a primitive species too emotional to comprehend true discipline. Now he understood. Discipline was nothing compared to conviction. A chime sounded. The comm channel was open. Static hissed, then resolved into the voice of Major Victoria Harriman. Commander Dralethian. Her tone was calm, not mocking, not triumphant, just steady, as if this were merely another negotiation, another step in an inevitable dance. Dralethian's mandibles twitched. He had expected gloating. He had prepared for rage. This quiet certainty was worse. You have something to say, he replied, his voice modulator flattening the harmonics of his native tongue into something the humans could parse. A pause, then, we don't want to destroy you. The words hung in the air like a blade suspended mid-fall. Vashdor's ocular lenses dilated, his copper-plated cranial ridges flexing in disbelief. The bridge crew shifted, their armored carapaces clicking in unease. Dralethian exhaled through his secondary vents, the heat of his breath fogging the air before him. Then why, he ground out, did you rebuild this monstrosity? Another pause. Then, not Harriman, but Corporal Evan Lee answered, his voice younger, rougher, edged with something that might have been amusement. To prove we could. Then softer. And to prove you'd listen. The truth of it struck Dralethian like a plasma round to the thorax. This had never been about vengeance, never about conquest. It had been about recognition. Humans did not fight for territory. They did not fight for resources. They fought always for the right to be seen. And now, at last, the Dralethians were looking. Outside, the void between the ships shimmered, not with weapons fire, but with the first faint pulse of a new signal. Not for surrender, for dialogue. Dralethian's neural tendrils stilled. The storm had broken, and in its wake, something unfamiliar stirred. The void between the human warship and the Dralethian battlecruiser Molten Will was no longer a killing field. The last embers of plasma fire had cooled, their fading glow swallowed by the infinite dark. The silence was not the quiet of defeat, nor the stillness of surrender. It was the breath before speech. Dralethian's neural tendrils coiled tight against his skull, his primary heart thrumming in a rhythm that defied all Dralethian military doctrine. His secondary circulatory system pulsed molten copper through his veins, a biological furnace meant for war. Yet now it burned with something else. Uncertainty, the human vessel before him, indomitable, was a relic resurrected. Its hull, once shattered in the last war, had been reforged not just with steel, but with memory. Every scar had been preserved, every fracture left visible beneath layers of fresh armor. It was not a warship, it was a monument. And its message was clear, we remember. Vashdor, the Dralethian scientist, stood rigid at the sensor array, his ocular implants flickering as they parsed the new signal. It was not a weapon lock, not a challenge. It was a hand extended across the dark. "Hi, Commander," Vashdor said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "They are transmitting historical records." Dralethian's mandibles twitched. Of what? The data unfurled across the command hololith. Not battle logs, not casualty reports, but something far more damning. Dralethian soldiers, centuries ago, dragging human prisoners into the dark. Dralethian commanders laughing as they glassed human colonies from orbit. Dralethian scientists dissecting live captives, convinced their pain responses proved inferiority. The counterpoint: humans, broken and bleeding, still fighting. Humans, rebuilding their cities in the shadow of orbital cannons. Humans, burying their dead with the enemy's own weapons as headstones. Dralethian's neural tendrils went slack. This was no propaganda, no fabrication. The encryption signatures were Dralethian, old but unmistakable. These were their records, their atrocities, and the humans had kept them, not to fuel hatred, but to remember the cost. Corporal Evan Lee's voice crackled over the calm as a blade unsheathed. "We don't forget, but we don't have to repeat." Outside, the void shimmered again, not with weapons, but with light. The human ship's external arrays ignited, not in attack formation, but in a pattern older than spaceflight. Illogical and undeniably alive, Dralethian exhaled, his furnace, heart slowing. The galaxy had always measured strength in firepower, in tonnage, in the ability to reduce worlds to ash. But humanity's true weapon was time. They endured, they waited, and when the moment came, they chose this. Not vengeance, understanding. Vashdor turned to him, his ocular lenses dimmed in something like shame. "What do we do?" Dralethian watched the colors bloom against the dark. For the first time in his life, a Dralethian high commander bowed his head. "We listen." And across the gulf of centuries, the ancient sleepers of Terra smiled. Their message had been received. The Dralethian fleet hung suspended in the void, their angular warships dark against the starburst of human light. For a long moment, no orders were given, no weapons charged. The bridge of the Ashen Will was silent, the usual hum of plasma conduits muted, as if the ship itself held its breath. Dralethian's claws flexed against the command console, the metal groaning under his grip. He had expected defiance, expected the humans to bare their teeth one final time, to die as they had lived, raging against the inevitable. This was worse, because it meant they had understood the Dralethians better than the Dralethians had understood themselves. Vashdor's voice was a low rasp, the sound of grinding embers. Their records, the ones we seized from their databanks, they weren't just war plans. Dralethian knew, he had seen the files himself, decades of intercepted transmissions, cultural archives, even the fragmented whispers of human music. The Dralethian High Command had dismissed it as noise, propaganda, but now, watching the fireworks paint the black with fleeting fragile color, he realized the truth. The humans had known they would be studied. They had known the Dralethians would see them as beasts, and they had let them, because the greatest trap was not a hidden weapon. It was patience. It was letting your enemy believe they had already won. Dralethian turned to the comm array. The order burned in his throat. Heavier than molten steel. Open a channel. The bridge crew froze. No Dralethian warship had ever hailed an enemy without firing first. But the humans had already rewritten the rules. The comm hissed to life. Static. Then, a human voice. Not a commander. Not a soldier. The melody was simple, unrefined. The words were lost in translation, but the meaning was unmistakable. It was a lullaby. Dralethian's furnace, heart stuttered. Across the fleet, Dralethian warriors lowered their weapons, and for the first time in 1,000 years of conquest, they listened. Really listened. The humans had not surrendered. They had invited, and the galaxy would never be the same.